Hello, everybody. Today's step of the engineering design process is to construct a prototype or model. This is the fifth step of the engineering design process. Now, if you remember the previous steps, for step one was to define or clarify the problem, understand what that problem is. Step two was to research the problem and find as much information about the problem as we could. Step three was to generate alternative solutions, which meant come up with lots and lots of different ideas for how we might solve that problem. Step four was to select the best solution of the bunch. And in that step, we began our design, the plans we were going to use to actually create it. And that brings us to step five, to construct something that actually works or represents the object. So in this step, we build a representation of our solution, test our ideas, and determine if any changes have to be made to the final solution. We use prototypes and models to do this. For instance, model, and this is going to be one of the words you have to transfer into your packet. Modeling is using replicas, drawings, or computers to represent an object in correct proportion. A model is just a representation of that object and doesn't necessarily always work or do what it's supposed to do. Models are usually built to represent large items such as buildings, bridges, ships, large planes, etc. A lot of times, especially with bridges or buildings, we wouldn't build what we call a prototype, which is a working model. We would build just a model that represents how the object's going to look and give us a better idea of what the finished product will be like. That brings us to prototypes. Prototypes are a full-scale model, a pre-production example for mass-produced items, a working model. Now, before we begin the majority of the objects, especially if they're manufactured objects, something that's going to be made in large quantities, we create a prototype. A prototype is something that we can actually test out and see how our ideas work. For instance, all car companies, before they start to mass produce cars by the tens or hundreds of thousands of units, build a few prototype cars, which look identical and work identical to how the final production car is supposed to work. They'll test these to make sure that these cars work and run correctly. And then once they're sure of that, they'll either put the car into production, or if they find flaws or things that need to be fixed, they'll redesign those parts and then retest the object to make sure that their new solution will work better than their old solution. This is even done with things like toys or shoes. Shoe companies will actually make prototype pairs of shoes where they'll make one or two or a small number, and then they'll have their employees wear them and then write up information about how the shoe felt, how it performed, what was good or bad, did parts wear out of the shoe, or did the seams break, so they can understand what needs to be fixed and what needs to be done before that object's actually going to be sold. So that is step five, building a model or a prototype. Make sure you get both these definitions in the packet, and be sure to turn that packet in when you're complete. Have a great day. Email me if you have any questions.